All right. My name's Drew, and you're an addict. What can I say about this guy tonight? I don't know, man. I met Keith at this convention 8 years ago, and we came together like this. And from then on out, this guy's just real close to me, and he's always at every meeting I always go to, and we pal around. We're like brothers. We do fifth steps together. We talk to each other, and he's just a real dear friend. And I love you, man. I'm glad that you're speaking tonight.
My name's Keith, and I'm an addict. I thought he was going to say something stupid. For a moment there, I thought he was going to introduce somebody else. First of all, I want to thank the committee that they had enough faith in me to ask me to speak tonight. It's been a burning question in my mind for a long time that I'd wondered, when a lot of conventions were going to break tradition and start inviting people who don't have tapes, and somebody actually trusted me without a tape because I don't have one. A few years ago, I said, I'm getting sick of this. I really wanted to speak at a convention. I thought I deserved it. I paid my dues. I did my time. And I was speaking at a meeting, and I said, I'm going to tape this, and I'm going to send it off to everybody. And Drew actually lent me his boombox, and it had a double cassette on there, and we had the microphone set up, and I got up there, and I gave a wonderful, marvelous talk. I mean, that was probably one of the best talks I've ever given in my life. And when it was over, I realized it was on dubbing from tape to tape instead of microphone. So the tape was blank. And at that time I realized, I think I'll leave it up to God on when this day would come. Now that it's here, I'm scared shitless. And I'm wondering why I wanted to do this so much. But, thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. Can't say that I'll take advantage of this opportunity. This may be the last time you'll ever hear me up here. But, hey, it's my night. I'm gonna make an attempt to try to share my experience, strength, and hope. And one day, when you've been clean as long as me, you'll be just like me. Now, before you go relapse, let me explain something. I've battled a lot trying to get clean and trying to earn the respect of others. I felt like the short guy on the basketball team. I always had to do twice as much to get half the results. And I don't know if it was more my looks or just my attitude, but I do know today, I'm a real prankster. I love practical jokes. I like to hang out, tell dirty jokes and weird stories, and get into lewd, lascivious behavior. But I have fun with it, and I don't mean or intend to hurt anybody. And I'm the blunt of most of my own jokes, which is kind of neat because, I'm an equal opportunity offender. I offend myself just as much as other people. But I found out that if you want people to respect you, you have to act all solemn and something like, you got to be serious or pious, and you got to come off as some guru. And I refuse to go that road because I think I would rather blow my brains out than do that. And now you get to do what you get to do till you want to quit doing it. But for me, if I can't have fun in recovery, I don't want to be here. If I can't have fun in Narcotics Anonymous, I don't want to be here. Now, there is a time for getting very serious when there's newcomers involved that don't understand and that my life is in jeopardy because I'm right where I put myself. and I conned myself for a couple years on what freedom really was. And there's a time to be serious, but there's a time to have a lot of fun. And the neat thing about it is, I think I've been able to balance that fairly well. And I know a lot of people around me tend to go a little overboard, but I don't try to take it too seriously. But when I need help, I make sure that I'm very serious, and I sit people down and I smack them around. As Drew says, I pimp slap them. And I wake them up and I say, listen, this is serious. I'm really hurting. And, I get down to what this program's all about for me. And that's, there's two sides of it. And, hopefully I'm going to be able to share a little of both tonight. And, I don't want to make this boring, but on the other hand, I do know that everybody in here is pretty much in their own world. I was getting nervous before this. I don't know if it was because of my 14 cups of coffee I drank right before I came up here. And another thing is, I don't know if I got to teach you all how to meditate so I can run out and use the bathroom real quick in the middle of all this, or, it was just the fact that I have to do something to try to impress you people. And I think it's a little of both, and hopefully my ego will come in the door any moment now and I'll be able to impress you. But it doesn't look like it's happening. So maybe I can share from my heart and get a message across. I come from an average broken home. And where I grew up, I was very sheltered. There was over 20 bars on a 4-block main street in northern Minnesota. Yes, it gets cold up there. It's still very cold up there. It's minus 10 all week, and you're like going, thank God I was able to get away. But there's not a lot to do during the winter months, so people take up, partying as a part-time hobby, and then when the summer rolls around, they forget to quit. So these people, the culture that's up there, unfortunately, it's fairly sad because a lot of people, it doesn't get a lot of people up there to visit except to go out in the Boundary Waters canoe area and get away from the local people, and they do their hunting and fishing, and then they come back and they leave. And there wasn't a lot of cultured people coming and staying. In most parts of the country, people show up and all of a sudden, they move there and they stay there. Nobody moved here. They moved away. And I think I really lost something because of that, because when I was, 14 years old growing up, all I knew is what these people knew. And it sucked. I mean, I don't know any other way to say it, but communication skills were at rock bottom. My family had none. My father and my mother got a divorce when I was about 10 years old. Actually, they separated when I was about 10. They didn't get a divorce till I was about 14, which was really strange because I didn't understand it. And when I was about 10 years old, I thought everything I did, I had to do to the ultimate perfection to get half the approval from them. When I was 10 years old, I was labeled a prodigy of some sort. I don't even know what anymore because I lost whatever it was. But I was on the news up there that carried to a town of about 100,000 people, Duluth, Minnesota, which is about 70 miles south of me. And what it was I was able to memorize anything. I could look at something, look away, and read it at 10 years old from my mind. I was able to name continents, dictators, leaders, whatever, at 10 years old. And I was impressing everybody, but I wasn't impressing myself. And because of I think the way I grew up, by age 13, my competitive spirit, I had to be number one. And by age 13, my competitive spirit, I was big in sports and all sorts of stuff. Everything I did to the maximum extreme. Because I think I was trying to bury my feelings because I had no idea how to deal with them. By the time I was 13, I was in a class, and I'd moved to another school, and I really wasn't accepted yet. And this teacher looks at this one guy, and it wasn't me, and said, "So you're our star student." And I'm like, she hasn't seen me yet, you know. I'm gonna show her something. And the first test we took, it was on a subject I had never taken before, and I guess they had it in the school before. And this guy aced it, and I think I got a B, you know. But it wasn't perfect, and this guy beat me. And I gave up. I quit. I literally just stopped. By age 10 years old, I was a genius. By age 13, I was in the principal's office every other day. I felt like Butthead. I really did. I just went to the complete opposite extreme. And I can identify with him a lot, you know. And I still can today. That's the unfortunate problem in my life. But to me, you know, something happened. And what I think happened was I found one of my biggest drugs of choice, which was just a form of escape that had nothing to do with chemicals. It had everything to do, though, with my mind. And defocusing everything, tuning everything out. And at that time, I started drinking. And I started drinking pretty heavily, every chance I got. Like I said, where I come from, these people party. And it was not very difficult for me to find it. By the time I was 15, I started getting into other stuff, and I would do anything I could get my hands on just to try it and experience it. You know, my biggest situation I had to deal with when I got here was I just turned 17 years old in 1980, and I was court ordered to go to a treatment center because I was uncontrollable. I'd already run away from home a couple times. I'd already flunked out, quit school many times, and they had actually put me in a slow learners class for drug addicts, which it was slow learners, but it was basically a bunch of drug addicts. And I had fun there, and but that got too hard for me. I mean, we were reading third grade material, and that got too difficult for me. I could not focus. I had no goals. I had no aspirations except to be terminally hip, fatally cool. I had to be powerful, and the way to be powerful was to be the man on the street who had what everybody wanted. And I knew that drug gave me that power. And it was the first time I'd felt really accepted since I was about 10 years old. And I was to the extreme. And when I got here, I was 17 years old and self-centered to the extreme. And I was court-ordered. The only reason I went was because it was 250 miles away, south in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul. And this treatment center I went to was for adolescents. It was a locked-door facility. And I thought if I got to the Minneapolis, St. Paul, I could run away. And I could it would be several hours south, that it would be easier for me to hit Texas and then figure out which direction I was going to go. Because I couldn't stand where I was at. And what it was I couldn't stand me. In this treatment center, there was a lot of people my age. And everybody was suffering from the same dilemma, self-centered fear. And these counselors kept telling me all these wonderful horror stories about when you go back home, all your buddies, they're using friends. They're just going to use you. You use them, they use you. That's all it is. Even though you grew up with them, that's all it is. You run out of money, you run out of whatever, where will they be? And I'm like, yeah, but you don't understand, my friends. I don't know where it came from, but about 4 weeks into this 2-month treatment center, I got the notion that I might give this a try. What they were talking about actually made sense. Because I knew at that time I didn't want to end up like my dad, and they kept pushing that on me. They said, "Do you want to end up like your parents?" And I was like, "No, well, change. Because all their dysfunctions are in you. They trained you. You were 5 years old, and you're it. You are a mirror of their fears. And something inside me said, I better listen to these people, and I didn't know why. They told me I was chemically dependent, which I had no idea what that was like, and it sounded a hell of a lot better than alcoholic. So I stuck. At this time, my mother had about 5 years in another fellowship, and she would push for this court order so that I went to treatment instead of to jail. And I think she saved my life, because at this treatment center, like I said, something came inside me where I said, I better at least listen to him. And I did, for some reason. I have no idea why. What grace of God brought that about? But when I went home, I had no clue to what I was going to do. I thought I'd give it a try for a while. I had no concept of a higher power. I thought I was an atheist, but I later on figured out I was just agnostic. I didn't care. I didn't want to hear about it. I did not care. Don't push it on me. I don't want to hear about it. And they said, that's okay. And that was a trip. I didn't understand it. But my friends, these people that I grew up with, trusted, loved, adored, and had a good time with, and got wild and crazy with, these people started laying bets who was going to get me stoned first and all this stuff. And they started, basically harassing me, which I understood that. And I said, I would have done it too. And I had no idea what to do. And my mother took me to a meeting. And at the first meeting at that time, they had no Narcotics Anonymous. As far as I know, they had no Narcotics Anonymous in Minneapolis, St. Paul. They might have, but the young people that I'd met in meetings, when they took us out to meetings, never told us about it. And there was 200 treatment centers at that time in Minneapolis, St. Paul. It was, quote, quote, the recovery capital of the world. And as Pete C., one of my old sponsors, says, yes, the Hazleton Hall of Fame was there. I did not go there, thank God. But I would have never lived it down around him. But somehow I got enough to at least try it for a while. Like I said, I had no idea what that meant. The first step was real vague to me because it dealt with a chemical. And that chemical was not my drug of choice. And, when I was 17 years old, people looked at me like, these old farts looked at me like, hey, I spilled more on my tie than you ever drank. And I said, if you weren't such a slob, you might have got here when I did. Well, later on, when we finally got NA going, I had addicts telling me if I didn't shoot dope in 1969, you're a milk sugar baby, you don't need to be here. And I said, well, if I shot milk sugar, I must be more of an addict because anybody can get addicted to the real thing. Maybe you don't need to be here. And the area I was living in was real depressed. It was a mining community, and the mines went under in about 1982. And my old using buddies, like I said, they were laying bets who's going to get me high first, and it turned out to be a real game. And I kept going, but they don't understand, you just don't understand. And my mother took me to a meeting, and she introduced me to my first sponsor. He was 6'5", red hair and Irish. And at this time, now, if you think back, this is one of the reasons somebody said that I might have been invited, because I did get clean when I was so young. If you think back to when you're 15 years old, somebody who had a driver's license was old and respected. When you were 16, somebody in senior high was old and respected. When you were 18, somebody in college was old. And you wanted their girlfriend really bad. Well, I'd just turned 17 years old. And, these people were like out of college. I couldn't identify. And usually the people up there, their drug of choice was alcohol because it was so accessible. With 20 bars on a 4-block main street. And that's all they did was bounce from one to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. And this guy who almost could identify with me was about 25 years old. He was 6'5", red hair and Irish. And he saved my life. He didn't ask me, was I going to go to a meeting the next day? He said, what time do you want me to pick you up? And then I'd hem-haw around, and he'd say, I'll be there at 7. I'm like, it starts at 8. And he's like, 7:10 at the latest. We'll get a cup of coffee before the meeting. I'm like, they got coffee at the meeting. You know, I want as little to do with this as possible. But I said I'd try it for a while. Plus my mother was pressuring me. And I had no communication with my father unless I went to where he was. He gave me his schedule and said, I bowl these nights, I play golf these days. You want to be my caddy? You want to watch me bowl? Show up over here. And that's about our relationship. Could not talk about feelings. Could not share or identify. And this guy Mike, that was my first sponsor, literally dragged me to meetings. And today I'm very grateful because there was nobody back in my area that was anywhere near my age. And I felt isolated, self-centered fear run rampant, and I knew it wasn't going to last long. But what I was doing, I think, was just trying to get enough time to con my mother into think I was doing good that I could save up some money and run away. Do it again. And because I really dreaded being there. And one of my favorite bands was going to do 2 shows that year, one in LA and one in New York, and I really wanted to go. And their initials are PF, and I had to go. So I was going to LA. It was one of my motivating factors of life. It was one of my dream goals. And something happened, though, that this guy dragged me to meetings, and I kept going back around my old friends because I had nobody else to hang out with. I had to see them during the day. Most of them were in the slow learning school, too. You know? And I had to go back to this school when I got out of treatment, even though I'd been kicked out of it because I was such a wonderful person. So what happened was I ended up going to some meetings, trying to get everything together, and all of a sudden, my old friends, like I said, we used to play really weird games with each other. We used to tie each other up to street posts, spray lighter fluid on the ground, and set it on fire. And as long as you knew how to dance, your pants legs didn't get caught with lighter fluid, and the only grass would burn, and basically, you could put it out pretty easily if you didn't panic. But the young kids panicked, and we had to cry a lot and watch them, or they cried a lot, and we laughed and put them out after a few minutes. Before their legs burned, but their pants legs were usually charred, and their parents would come try to kick our ass, and we'd shoot bottle rockets at them. And I'm standing there, and I've been clean a few months now, and all of a sudden I see somebody standing there with a rope in their hand. I'm like, great, we're going to tie somebody up. I'm still stupid and crazy. And I looked around, everybody's smiling at me. No problem, I know what to do, just don't panic. And I glanced around, everybody's staring at me, and I noticed one guy sitting in a car. It's an envisionment in my brain that's been etched there. It's burned into my brain. The car door was swung open. The guy had an old Cutlass with the swinging seats. So the seat was facing the sidewalk. He had the door open, and he had a bottle of liquor in his hand. My old friends, the people I thought cared about me, loved me, respected me, were going to tie me down, pour liquor down my throat. Hey, if I was still using, I would have done it to one of the other people. I had nothing more to expect. I called that the drug addict marathon. We were in such great shape, I literally had to outrun them. I ran 3 blocks, they ran 2. And I don't know why I ran, because something inside me wanted me to give in and be a part of again. And I don't know why I ran. But the whole time I was running, I'm going, you don't understand! You don't understand! And when I got about 1 block away, I realized they don't understand. And now I was in a major predicament. Hang out with these people and try to get some sanity in my life. Because I knew I was crazy. And I knew I needed help. And I knew if I wanted a chance at life, I had to stay clean. Because I knew I had a very addictive personality. So, I was growing up in my brother's footsteps, which I'll get to that in a moment. But my mother got an opportunity that summer to move to North Carolina, and we moved to Greensboro. And like I said, the area, there were 6,500 people working in one mine. The town I lived in had 10,000 people in it, and all those people serviced that mine. In 1983, I think there was about 100 security guards keeping the place closed, and that was it. Grocery stores, it was just a chain. Everything closed. Fires everywhere, people burning their businesses, get the insurance and run. It was horrible. It was a mass depression. People were making $25 an hour to push a broom, and all of a sudden, everybody's out of a job. So there was no money to go around. So we were real lucky. We were one of the last people to get out of there and sell their house at what was considered market value. And we moved to North Carolina. And I truly believe that this was my higher power in action, because I moved to North Carolina and all of a sudden there was Young People's AA. And I said, wow, this is it. I identify. I found some people. There were a couple people there that were actually in their early 20s and late teens. And I was excited. I felt like I finally found a place I could fit in. And, but it was still lacking something. And my new sponsor at this time was this big old burly truck driver. He had a house where he rented out rooms to newcomers. And one of these guys who was in and out of the program, his brother was in prison up in Pennsylvania. And his brother had sent him, because he was having so much problem staying clean, his brother had sent him an NA white book and a couple pamphlets. And we had no idea what this was. And this is probably early fall 1980. We had no clue to what it was. But we said, hey, it's AA for drugs. But I knew there was a lot of people out there that was like me. And I knew that there had to be a way for young people to identify, because I even could identify at that time, it wasn't the chemical that was getting me in trouble, it was me, my self-centered fear. So what happened was, we said, well, let's start this out and see what happens, and see if anybody's interested. And we actually had about 10, 15 people. We rounded up all the degenerates that were going to meetings and said, let's start an NA meeting. And as far as I know, that's how the first Narcotics Anonymous meeting in North Carolina started in about October 1980 in Greensboro, North Carolina. And it lasted about 9 months. And what happened was, it got into a war of what this program was. And that's when I started hearing, I don't belong there. I'd heard that over there, now I'm hearing it here. I don't know what it is, but when you look at a 17-year-old person, do you say, well, what, you smoke a joint and the seed popped and you go, man, I need help, What do you think? Because that's what people thought about me. I used to shoot at people using, and I had, in this program, we don't have feelings, we've got feelings! I hurt as bad as I wanted to, as long as I wanted to. I wanted help at this time. But it got into a using war of who done what when, whose connections were, and we had no recovery techs at that time, and it was very dark and dismal. And after about 9 months, I finally locked the door and walked away. I said, if this is what NA is going to be, we don't need it. But those damn people from Winston-Salem, they picked up on it and started their own meetings. And they kept it alive. And at that time, there were people here in Greenville, Spartanburg, South Carolina, who were having regular meetings. And they hooked up with some people in Asheville, and they knew of the people in Atlanta, and they got some other groups scattered around, and we didn't know they existed. It wasn't until about 1982 that we had actually found out Narcotics Anonymous existed anywhere else in the Carolinas. You know, we're talking to the world headquarters back when it used to be at Jimmy K's house, the founder, and he's like, oh, you know, you're part of a region, and what are you going to name your area? And we're like, what? What do you mean we're part of a region? And we didn't know at that time that anybody else existed. And they got us in touch with. And all of a sudden, you know, we were able to communicate, which really started giving us hope that this was going to work. But my first step, you know, I admitted that I was powerless over my addiction and not the chemical, my addiction. When I finally grasped what that meant, I knew I could go nowhere else. And ever since that time, I've put every effort I could into keeping this program alive. And there have been times I've dropped out of service, but you know, back in 1983 and 1984, we used to drive hundreds of miles to go to meetings through the snow, uphill on bald tires both ways. You know, and we were grateful. I paid my dues again. But I come back to the fact that all we knew was, you know, we had this thing, and it was for drugs. It's for drug addicts. And up to that point, drug addicts couldn't go anywhere and identify. And all they could do was suffer and die. And I know what suffering's like. You know, I still suffer today at times. I still think my worst bottom was at 6 years clean. You know, it's got nothing to do with drugs. It's got everything to do with addiction. My addiction is still running rampant in my life if I allow it to. And today, as long as I keep working spiritual principles, which is the rest of the steps, I can allow myself the freedom to do something about all these self-centered fears. So I don't end up like my father. I mean, he's a great guy, but he can't communicate. He cannot identify with people. All he shows is fear and pain, negativity. That's all he's got. That's all he's got to look forward to in his life until he changes. Second step came around, and we you know, at that time we had no clue to what second step meant either. So it's like, you know, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. I was an agnostic, claiming atheist. So that power greater than myself, I swore had to be God. It doesn't say God. Power greater than myself is the literature, it's the group, it's people who are stronger than me at that moment. I don't have to identify so much with oh, you had the same pain I did at that moment. I just have to know there's hope of the future. That yesterday, you know, won't be as bad as tomorrow if I work on it today. Something like that. I think I got that backwards. I did. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think it's time for me to sit down now. Tomorrow won't be as, yesterday. Tomorrow won't be as bad as yesterday. As long as I do something about it today. And we started grasping the tools of what this really meant. And You know, when it came to the thing of making a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood Him, at that time, as I understood Him was the literature and the people. I couldn't conceive a deity of some sort because all I knew was the world was screwed up and, you know, I couldn't identify with it. I thought I was misplaced. I didn't think I was supposed to be on this planet. I didn't know why I was alive. I didn't know why I was clean. You know, it's bad enough I was always the short guy, or I was always the young guy. Now I come here, and I'm going through it all over again. Just as I was fighting my way to the top of the drug world. You know, high school drug kingpin, yes. And, you know, just as I was getting my power I so rightfully deserved, you know, I had to throw it all away. But somehow through this treatment center and the School for Slow Learners, I got enough credits to be in 12th grade when I moved to North Carolina. And I had to take every class to graduate. I had no study hall, so I thought I was being robbed. I hadn't done any schoolwork in 5 years, but I was being robbed, you know. But the neat thing about it was, in Minnesota, the 12th grade classes were 9th and 10th grade classes in North Carolina. So I'm a senior sitting in all these 9th and 10th grade classes. And I thought that was really cool. Stuff I had no clue at in the first place, but the way they taught it was on such a looking down onward level, you know, I almost grasped it. I had 3 teachers tell me I didn't deserve to graduate. But since I needed their class to graduate, they were going to graduate me. Since I was such a pain in the ass, really. I mean, I was sent to the principal's office just as much clean as when I was using. I mean, trying to have fun, just trying to have fun. Well, yeah, my fun usually gets me in a lot of trouble. So, I ended up graduating high school, which is a miracle. And I ended up staying clean for more than a year, which was a miracle. I turned 18, and that was the drinking age. You know, it's like, I'm 18 now, I can drink. You know? I wonder if I'm really an addict. And my sponsor, the nice guy that he was, said, well, let's go get you a 6-pack and find out. I said, no. He said, let's go get you a case and find out. I said, a case? No, I just want to get a 6-pack. He says, well, a case is cheaper, you know. And I'm a thrifty guy that I am, hey. But I said, no, I'd probably drink it all. And he said, well, sounds like you're in the right place then. I'm like, shit, I can't get anything by this guy. So, the first several years, I really felt isolated and alone. And what happened was I got involved in religion. Somehow, I had a spiritual awakening. And I thought this God thing meant religion. And I thought it was just the freedom to choose any religion you want, but you got to get religious. So I picked this non-denominational church that had a lot of girls going to it. Purely unselfish and pure thoughts, of course. And I dove into it head first. These people treated me nice. They respected me. I don't know why, but they did. And they didn't care if I had long hair, and they let me date their daughters, which is amazing. Until I'd bring them to a meeting. 2 girls in a row. I brought them to a meeting. They both picked up white chips. They said, I was just going to church to get my parents off my back. I'm like, oh, I must really be an addict because I am what I attract, and I attract sickness. And to make sure the pattern still works, a year ago, I did it again. Not from a church, though, but I dated my first Earth girl since then, and she picked up a white chip. As a matter of fact, I was scared to bring her to meetings for a while because I knew she would have to. And I was too busy having fun, though. And that's a another part of my story. I'll get to that in a few. Actually, I better hurry up here, so I want to get to the 10th and 11th steps as soon as possible. Does that mean I can jump the 4th? My first 4th step was just a dumping ground. My second 4th step was a little deeper. My third 4th step was the one that really rocked my world, because then I could finally see patterns. That was the one I finally took a true look at myself and saw my motivations for what I was doing. Like I said, I was going to church at first, for about 2 years solid. I even dropped out of the fellowship for a short period of time, and that's why people still today, there are people even in this room, call me preacher. Please don't. Thank you. That's been, 12 years ago, Taz? Where are you? 10 years ago? And I went to the opposite extreme after I got out of my church mode. And I joined a motorcycle club. Yahoo! But what it was I grew up around bikers. I thought these people were it. I thought they were cool. I thought, the church thing fulfilled the spiritual thing where I actually at this point do believe that there was a God. And I knew I wasn't it. But getting that relationship tight, I still didn't feel accepted. And I wanted to be accepted. And I grew up around bikers. And at this time, my brother died from addiction. He was 23 years old, and I was following in his footsteps. I was 3 years clean. I thought God betrayed me. Screw the religion. I came, and the miracles that have happened in my life in this program are amazing. I was living at a house at that time, which at that time my mother moved back to Wisconsin. And I was living in a house where I never called. My landlord was such a pain in the ass. He would come visit me whenever I come home. 2 o'clock in the morning, he comes strolling in my apartment. I'm like, leave, bring a girl home. He comes strolling in anyway. The guy was a nut. Well, I was over at a friend's house. I was even planning to spend the night over there at this guy's house. I was the light Keith. He was the dark Keith. And in the program in Greensboro at that time. And I decided to call my landlord, and my landlord said, call your mother. I'm like, why? He's like, don't ask me why, just call your mother. And I'm like, and I never talked to this guy. I call my mother. Your brother was pronounced dead this morning from driving under the influence. He was legally double over the limit drunk, and there's probably also other chemicals supposedly because of the party he was at. And single car accident. And he's dead. So what happened was I ended up being at this wonderful spiritual point, being ripped from my environment and taken to a place back where this environment had no support, no fellowship, and nobody who understood me. And I had to go through this, basically with my mother. And my father at that time owned a bar, one of these 20 bars on the 4-block Main Street, and I ended up having to bartend because he couldn't handle it. He was having a nervous breakdown. And he was doing painkillers so bad he was about to pass out. And I had to bartend. And I did it, and I don't know why. I guess that people-pleaser thing was still rolling deep within me. And stayed clean. I have no idea how or why. This is the best excuse I could have had to use. And people would have patted me on the head and said, oh, we don't know what you must have felt. And I didn't use. And I was there for a month. And today, you know, I look back on that and it's such a miracle that I stayed clean. You know, people often ask me, why have I been clean so long? And, you know, why did I start at a young age? Well, I think I was sicker than most and I needed a head start. And I really believe that I have some super deep-seated issues that if I didn't deal with them when I dealt with them, I'd be dead today too. And I know that. And I know for me to go back using today, I would be dead. There's just too much insanity run through my life where I would go off the deep end too quick. And, you know, I still have this thing in the back of my mind, the right car, the right woman, the right job, the right situation is going to make me happy. And it never does. Never has, never will. So, at this time, I really got involved in the program, but at the same time, my brother had a Harley Davidson that he left, and I decided it was mine because I was the only one who's going to use it. And I joined a motorcycle club that was clean in 1984. And again, I was the youngest. I had the most time, and I looked like I was 15. I was about 21 years old at that time, and I looked like I was 15 years old. I'm 31 today. I still can't shave. I still can't grow a mustache. So at that time, I really looked young still. And that was just it. When I was 17, I looked like I was 13, really. And that's why I say I'd do twice as much to get half the respect. And I thought that was going to fix me. I thought it was going to bring back something from childhood I lost or missed. And what it was it wasn't. It wasn't there. And it took me going through it, though, to figure it out. That, this isn't going to make me happy. I enjoyed it at the time it was happening. I really had a lot of fun, but the insanity and sickness that was still available to me at that time, I had nothing to live for in that lifestyle. And if you want to do that, that's fun. That's fine. That's your situation. Mine, I couldn't. I mean, I love to ride today. Need a bike, but I love to ride today. And but I can't do it in an organized group because of the power trip I go on. The ego gets too big, and I start thinking I am somebody again. So what happened then was I ended up quitting, and I really started getting involved in the fellowship, and I met a girl, moved away from Greensboro down to Columbia, South Carolina, and that blew up really fast. Figured I had to move to Charlotte. I was heavily involved in service when I lived in Greensboro and Columbia, and then I got to Charlotte, and I kind of backed off a little bit. And I was involved in a home group, sponsored a few people, but I really kicked back and kind of watched recovery and started playing with my devices. And at that time, when I hit Columbia and got ready to leave Columbia, I was at the lowest point of my recovery ever, at 6 years clean. I wanted to blow my brains out so bad. I was broke, penniless, jobless, homeless. I thought freedom was a Harley Davidson and a backpack. And then my Harley broke. And then it was a backpack, and it was like I had nothing, absolutely nothing. And I thought that was freedom. And what it was I was enslaving myself into a lifestyle because of what other people would think about me. And, I had to get away. So I moved up to Charlotte and got involved in work and trying to make a career. And I failed at that. Guy tried handing me a $50,000 a year business, and I turned it down after a couple of years of working on it. And I didn't want the responsibility. I wanted to be free again. And this freedom thing has been driving me crazy for a long time, because I wanted the power to do whatever I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. It sounds like an addict, doesn't it? Do I qualify? But I met a lot of nice people in Charlotte, and a few of them are even here tonight, and that's really neat that they're still around. I'm grateful for that. But at this time, I really started getting into dealing with defects of character, shortcomings, what they are. Defective character is something I'm not capable of doing. I'm still not capable of living without this defect. And my shortcomings are whenever I fall short of being perfect. And whenever I don't make the grade, that God will at least help me out through that time. And I started studying different religions, tons of them. I started studying different philosophies. And I did, to the best of my ability, I got right into dealing with prayer and meditation and being a part of my inner being, who I really am. And I found out, it's not a religion that's going to make us happy. It's not things, toys, whatever. It's our relationship with God. It's our relationship with our higher power and ourselves. I think when we look back and we're 80 years old or however old we are, and we're kicking back on the porch, and what are we going to think about? I should have done this. What's important in our life? What is truly important in my life is my relationship with myself. Today I truly believe in, people say no pain, no gain. I truly believe in no pain. Hey, no pain, okay? I truly believe that we suffer from a disease today that can be arrested, so I don't have to be arrested. My thing about using today is I don't have to use other people to get my way. It's not just using drugs. Anything can be a drug to me. So all of a sudden, I got really deep into this about working spiritual principles and living life on life's terms and being responsible. I screwed that up too, but I had fun doing it, and I learned a lot. But I always come back to that, this is my life. I got clean so I could be happy. I don't know why you're clean. I got clean so I could be happy, joyous, and free. If you want to be happy, joyous, and free, work the steps. It will happen. May not be right away, but it will happen. And all of a sudden, something happened where I was set free. I learned how to meditate. Now, Narcotics Anonymous has no opinion on what type of meditation you do. I've got a few that aren't dealing with any religion. And it's basically breathing, centering yourself, focusing all your energy in one direction. Because when you focus your energy in one direction, you shut off this. You can never quit thinking about anything. You can never quit thinking. I don't care what anybody says unless you're passed out cold, and even then you're dreaming and you just don't know it. Your subconscious is so powerful. See, right now you're listening to me at 400 words a minute. I'm speaking at about 100 words a minute. Everything I say you're judging. Is he right? Is he wrong? Where do I categorize this? Well, oh my God, is he going to break the traditions? And all of a sudden, all these things are going through your brain. You can't stop that. When you meditate, you shut it down to a point where you're focusing in one direction. And that's when we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for the knowledge of His will for me and the power to carry that out. Praying only for the knowledge of. Now, where do I get the knowledge of? Through prayer. Where do I get the answers? Meditation. Or from you people. Actually, I think my prayers, in a sense, come from me. I think I'm a child of God today. And as a child of God, what happens is I'm not a slave of God. I'm not a nephew. I'm not a cousin. I'm a child. And just as a child grows up, I grow up today, and I can speak to my Father on an intellectual basis, although He can't speak back to me on an intellectual basis unless it's about stocks or something stupid like that. I'm talking about on feelings level. I can grow up today spiritually and talk to God on an intellectual level about feelings. I don't think God has a will for my life anymore today. I think I've finally gotten to the point where I'm working enough spiritual principles in my life, like don't do the crime if you can't do the time. That's a spiritual principle. They got prison, they got meetings in jail. If you want to do it, go for it. Pay the price. Be responsible for your actions. Do to others as you'd want them to do to you. Respect everybody as you'd want to be respected. Live and let live. Halts. Don't get too hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or stupid. There's a lot of spiritual principles that this program gives us that I've learned over the years, and what happens is all of a sudden I start thinking from these as a base, and things start coming from what's right, what's wrong. Well, I know what's wrong, so there's only one direction. Because I know what's right today. And I think God is, why are we on this planet? I like what Greg from Charlotte says, we're not a piece of protoplasm floating through the universe with no destination. Why are we on this planet? Is it to suffer? When I first got here, I thought, God couldn't affect me while I was using because I couldn't feel. Well, you're clean now. You can feel. Here, feel this. No. He touched me. That doesn't get it. Not a loving higher power. Power greater than myself. That doesn't get it. I think God, to me, my own personal opinion, wants us to be happy. Sure, there's going to be things we get to go through and lessons we get to learn, but guess who brings those upon themselves? Us. I bring upon everything upon me. And it all comes from when I was 4 years old and my father and mother were programming me. In an average Leave It to Beaver household, you hear by the time you're 18, average Leave It to Beaver household, you hear by the time you're 18, no, you can't, you're rejected, don't, 180,000 times by the time you're 18. You hear, I love you, yes, you're accepted, 40,000 times. Now, you can say, I love myself, I deserve the best, I'm a child of God, 500 times a day when you're 18 years old for 3 years and not catch up. Do you think that affects the way you think at all? Yeah, it does. Now, in my family, it's probably 200,000 to 20,000. Literally. Because I was being rejected every moment. I thought everything, if my parents fighting, it's my fault. The greatest thing you could ever do if you're ever going to have an argument with your significant other is get the kids out of the room. The reason why is they always think it's their fault, no matter what it is. You want to love your kids, get them out of the room, then fight. But to me, I truly believe that if somebody says, I'm going to have kids, and when my kids are growing up, I'm going to tell them, 150,000 times both sides, they're loved, accepted, and whatever. You can't do it. There is absolutely no way you can do it. Do you know why? Because we are what we attract, and sick attracts sick, and we make sick people. We meet them, we make them. We're radio waves. Look at what you attract. That's all we are. We're magnets for this stuff. And what happens is this. I relate it to this. I know several girls like this. They keep attracting abusive men into their life. Mentally, verbally, physically, whatever. And then they go pick the same guy with a different face and name. Wake up! Hello? What? Wake up! They can't. Because something inside tells them, I deserve to be abused. And until they change that desire, they keep attracting the same guy over and over and over. Well, in my life, I keep attracting women who are possessive. And it's just something for me. I just keep attracting the same woman over and over and over. But when I change, what I attract changes. Well, if I was going to say to the kids, I love you, you're accepted, you can't do it because you're not sending out that signal for them to respond back to. You can't do it. As much as you say, I'm going to do it, you might change it a few thousand, but realistically it won't happen. Because the kids will do something to screw up, to make you go off the deep end, because they know how to push your buttons, because you trained them how to push your buttons. Same way I was trained to push my parents' buttons. Now, I am stopping that cycle in my life, where the fears of my fathers back when they chased each other around with swords and said, change religions or die, and why America was founded to get away from that kind of stuff, and now we're doing it again. I'm changing that in my life. I don't have to live by those rules anymore. And that's where happiness comes from with me. Is being able to love myself, self-esteem. I had to do twice as much to get half the respect. And what it was I didn't respect myself. How could I deserve respect? How could things come to me out of respect when I didn't respect myself? And if you don't respect yourself, you're going to get that mixed bag of garbage and wonder why. Why is the world picking on me? It's picking on you because you're pickable. I would say something else, but it's Drew's anyway. I'll let him say it next time. But it always comes back to, I am responsible for me. I don't know what's going to fix me. Here's steps 6 and 7 again. I don't know what's going to fix me. I keep thinking more money will fix me, and it doesn't. Because that's my thinking. My life's unmanageable. I have no idea how to run my life. My life is none of my business when I turn it over. When I let it go. When I say, God, I have no more will. All of a sudden, I get a will. God put something in my heart that I really want to do. Today, I'm living my dreams. Today, I've got my dream job. I'm excited about life. I mean, I am fantastically excited about life. You know, I love it. It's great. And like this night, my dreams are starting to really come true. And it's only because about 5 or 6 years ago, I finally started dealing with these deep inner objects. My true fears. My quote, quote, inner child. The one that needs to be loved and nurtured. But it always comes back to the fact that I can change any day I want to. That's a tough pill to swallow. Have you ever heard the slogan, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear? The teacher's been there the whole time. You haven't heard it. People have been saying this stuff for years. 30 years. Easy. Nobody's heard it because they weren't ready for it. It's a building block. It's steps. Just like the steps of Narcotics Anonymous. Learning how to love yourself is an expression of. It's a takeoff from what you've already learned. It's these categories I was telling you about. Walls. Oh, can't believe that. Have an open mind. It might make sense one day. It might save your life one day. So when you've got 6 years clean, and this is what I'm getting at. This is my main point of the whole night. When you've got 5 years clean and you want to blow your brains out, and you chicken out by going to another fellowship thinking they're going to fix you, remember what I said. It's happening. We've lost half our fellowship in Wilmington, North Carolina, because they thought somebody else was going to fix them. Every one of them's got more than 5 years clean. Every one of them were staunch NA supporters. They're just bouncing along, doing what they think they know is best. We have a lot of people leave, blow their brains out or whatever, 5, 6 years clean, because they think, oh, this should be, I should be through this by now. I should be better than this. This shouldn't be happening to me. Who are you? You're an addict. 5 years in your entire life, 80, 100 years, whatever, is nothing. Wait till you get to 10 years, you want to blow your brains out. I was joking with Pete before, At 10 years, I almost thought about blowing my brains out, but I was joking around more than anything, just wanting sympathy. I wanted this respect I so greatly deserved. But I found out that I don't get it from you people. I get it from me. And when I get it, that's what I exude. And when I exude it, that's what comes back. And if you think you're going to get respect out of self-pity, you won't. People want sympathy from me. I tell them, look it up in the dictionary between shit and syphilis. There's a thing called empathy and tough love, and that's what we're all trying to do here. We're trying to learn how to love each other. But I love my brother to death. I pushed him away from the fellowship and he died. There are tools today we can learn how to do that with intervention, not have to do that anymore. There's things we can learn today how we don't drive ourselves out of the program. Why have I been clean for 14 years as of Tuesday? I have no idea. Except that I'm constantly pushing towards learning who I am. And I never really have lost touch with meetings. I've always kept a base of people I can talk to about anything at any time. And I've blamed God a lot for my my insecurities, but it's not my higher power's fault. It's my fault, and I need to be responsible about that. So today, I'm being responsible about it. And I'm hoping that this coming out of the dark theme, that some of you wake up a little bit and realize, hey, you know, I can have a great life. I want to be happy, joyous, and free. I want to be free from active addiction. Most of us don't have 10 minutes free from active addiction because it's got nothing to do with drugs. I've been clean off chemicals for 14 years. I'm 31 years old now. It's almost half my life. And I'm still sick as shit. But I have fun. I don't suffer from mental illness anymore. I enjoy it. Anyway. And 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to addicts and practice these principles in all our affairs. It comes down to that, practicing these principles in all our affairs. Not half time, not when people are looking, not to impress others. In all our affairs. That's the only way to stay sane. And I hope that this has helped somebody. It's helped me, but I hope that some people can identify with this. And if you're having problems, I don't like to call them problems, it's situations. Some are good, some are bad, but you got situations. Don't always look at them in a negative term. I want to close with this. There's an old man, wealthy man from a third world country. The only reason he was considered wealthy is because he was the only one in the village to have a horse. One day his horse runs away. All the villagers are happy, but they have to mask it, and they come up, oh, you poor thing, we're so sorry your horse ran away. A couple days later, his horse comes back with the mate. So now he's got 2 horses. Now all the townspeople are pissed off. But they have to mask it. Oh, great, love it, asshole. And this guy's like, hey, everything works out the way it's supposed to. They're like, yeah, right. Well, a couple days later, his only son's riding the new horse to break him in, and the horse throws him, kid breaks his leg, and he's in a third world country, so now he's crippled. What a lovely thought. But guess what? Guy's like, hey, everything happens the way it's supposed to. And all the townspeople are like, yeah, but they have to mask it. They have to hide their feelings and say, oh, you poor thing. But inside, they're happy. Know these inside feelings. Because a few weeks later, the army comes through. They take the horses. They take every male in the village that's of fighting age, except for the son, because he has got a broken leg and considered crippled. Yes, the man lost his horses, but he got to keep his son, which is important. And the townspeople are furious, going, hey, how come you got to keep your son? Isn't it enough that you've got more crops than us and you're wealthy and all this stuff? It's like, hey, everything works out the way it's supposed to. And they want to kill this guy. But what it is everything that looks like a tragedy turned out to be a blessing. Everything that looks like a blessing turned out to be a tragedy. And that's the way my life is. When I got clean, it was the biggest tragedy of my life. I hated life. I hated myself. I hated the program. I hated you people. You people didn't understand me. It turned out to be the greatest blessing that could ever happen to me. And as long as I leave it in my higher power's hands today, I don't judge what's going on around me. Because whatever's happening, whenever you're getting evicted, whenever you're losing something that you thought was the most precious damn thing in your life, might be the greatest blessing. I love you people today, and I want to help any way I can. So stay in touch. Love you.